There is still more bullying going on. It's happened here in Houston. First Adriana Kirch, now a 14-year-old in Houston committed suicide. Tonight, you're going to hear from the father of that 14-year-old. He says after all that, he just moved her out of the state. And now the school is having a meeting because they're under attack about this. According to the description from YouTube, it says parents in Bellevue say enough is enough after a 14-year-old girl committed suicide this month. There have been several complaints about severe bullying within the Barbers Hill Independent School District. And my latest comment, 2 hours ago, I said common sense alert. I'll play that alarm right after the clip. Take a look.
The words were, I'm going to make your life a living hell.
This father, who doesn't want to be identified, says for 3 years his daughter has been bullied and harassed while attending schools in the Barbers Hill Independent School District.
It spans the range. As little stuff as picking on her and tripping her or whatnot in the hallways to, I want to make sure that your dad dies.
He shared this text message exchange with us. He said it shows a student threatening his daughter, writing to her, quote, "If I find out you're lying, it's not going to be good for you."
And one of her friends who were being told they're going to be jumped went to the principal, and principal laughed and said, well, that's not going to happen.
The dad says a couple of days later, his daughter attempted to take her own life.
She was trying to essentially be a martyr for those that don't have a voice.
This month, a 14-year-old girl attending Barbers Hill South took her own life. Her mother telling us she's devastated and cries to the point of not being able to speak.
But there's nothing being done at this school about bullying.
Over the last week, KPRC2 reached out to the district several times asking about parents' concerns. On Thursday, we sent them this list of questions asking if anything is being done about bullying, and if so, what. They didn't respond. I sent another email today, once again requesting comment, and still no response.
I know of at least 4 families that have outright moved out of this town because of this, because of the torture, the torment.
And tonight's school board meeting is expected to start in about an hour, and I'm told parents are planning to protest outside. Reporting live in Mount Bellevue, Sabir Rayford, KPRC 2 News.
Common sense alert. Common sense alert. That principal who just laughed and said, it's not going to happen. Because let me tell you something. If my nephew or niece was being bullied at school, and one of his or her friends came to that principal and said, did the same thing that he did, and I heard about this, I wouldn't be happy. I would pull out of that school and drag my niece to a different school. My brother would just be all like, what are you doing? Your daughter or someone's being bullied. I'm not gonna let that happen. I'm dragging her butt to the bluff. Try to stop me. Because really, bullying is just a very serious issue here. Very serious. And nobody uses common sense. Common sense would have been like this. A student reports bullying. The principal confronts the bullies. Actually, first, we got the right. The second thing is this principal asks, who is the bully? And who are these students? Gives the students' names. The principal calls in the students. They hear the other side of the story. The principal hears the other side of the story. Solve the problem by giving them detention or suspension. Because a lot of schools have zero tolerance policies on bullying. And when you're dealing with situations like this, it just gets underneath your skin that, oh, I did the wrong thing here. What I need to do is make things right. Now the school board's going to meet, and probably soon we'll know. We will know what happened when somebody tried to take his or her own life. Because when you're dealing with people who are being bullied, it gets to you. Like I said before, if my child was being bullied, I would pull him out of that school and transfer to a different school. If that didn't work, I would homeschool them. Pay for a private school. Or find a better neighborhood in this, or find a better neighborhood in the state that has a better public school with all of its policies. The bottom line here is that principal who just laughed needs to resign immediately. Because right after that, if that was me, if I was the principal and I did the same thing he did, they'd ask for my resignation, I'd resign right away. I resign right away, go to the media, tell my side of the story, and I don't care if they would fire me or not. I don't care. Coming up next, more developments into the student that attacked the teacher's aide. What we're now learning so far. Then more on Antonio James, as he's prepared to die. Will he or won't he? It's up to the governor or the courts. Stay with us. It's the story causing outrage on social media and to mental health advocate. Just 3 days ago, there was a student who was arrested for aggravated battery after he attacked a teacher's aide. Now, the teacher's aide took away his Nintendo Switch. If you saw on Saturday's show, we showed you the clip of when the 17-year-old attacked the teacher. Now, the teacher took the Nintendo Switch. He came up, sucker punched her, beat her up. It took five teachers to just drag him out. But that's not all. I also played you the arrest clip. That was probably being cut. That was probably an audio cut, but I'm not sure. But there is now, like I said, there's new developments tonight. You're going to hear the teacher's name and the family as they tell all sides of the story. Here's Les Trent.
We now know the identity of the teacher's aide who was left unconscious after a brutal beating by a student. Her name is Joan Natick. She's 57 and a single mom. Her daughter Nikki says, "Please be comforted knowing she is home and recovering. This incident has reached areas of the world I never thought possible." Natick's son is a senior at the high school where the attack took place. "My brother was on campus during the time of this incident. Thankfully, he did not witness the actual event," writes the sister. Outrage is growing over the attack, which was triggered after Natick confiscated the 17-year-old's Nintendo Switch portable gaming device. It took 5 fellow teachers to pull him off.
Put your hands behind your back.
This is the moment cops took the 6'6", 17-year-old into custody.
Am I going to jail?
Yes, you are. You're not help.
I don't want to go to jail.
And now, this mental health advocate is coming under fire for saying that taking away the student's gaming device may have triggered him. She says people have to understand the suspect is a special needs student.
That child has mental health issues. He is just that, a child. That teacher paraprofessional should have never been left alone in a situation where she could have been attacked.
A GoFundMe has been set up to raise money for the teacher.
The school superintendent said creating a safe learning and working environment is critical. The 17-year-old student is being charged as an adult.
That 17-year-old's been charged with aggravated battery. But I'm not sure. I'm going to have to reread the article just to remember. Because I probably remember. This was on Friday. As new developments. Aggravated battery. Yeah, aggravated battery. So it was aggravated battery. So, what's the charge here? He's charged with aggravated battery. As for going to jail, that's a good question. If you're convicted of aggravated battery in the state of Florida, you can face up to 15 years in prison, up to 15 years on probation, and fines up to $15,000. $15,000. You'd have to go on Jeopardy during your probation to come up with $15,000. Or go on Wheel of Fortune, or go to The Price is Right in order to get that $15,000 and pay your fines. That's just an awful suggestion. Your probation officer would be there. So again, you convicted of aggravated battery, you face up to 15 years in prison, up to 15 years probation, and $15,000 in fines. The minimum sentence... The minimum sentence for aggravated battery in Florida, 21 months in prison, but may also sentence the person up to the statutory maximum of 15 years in prison. That's 21 months. If he's charged an adult, the courts can find that in that other clip, this mental health professional saying he has special needs. But we don't know that. You don't jump to conclusions that he was special needs unless you already know him. If you already know the kid and say, well, he's special needs, do you have evidence to prove that? If you do not have evidence, then the judge can just say, well, we sentence him to 15 months in jail, 15 years in prison, and 15 months probation, and $15,000 in fines. What about the parents? If the parents came forward and told their side of the story, we'd know. But now we don't know what happened. And if we do, we'll probably let you know. But again, we'll keep looking into the story and we'll let you know what happens. Next, will James Antonio die or live? Remember, it's up to the governor and the courts to decide his fate. Cynthia McFadden continues The Judgment at Midnight when we return. Stay with us. Saturday, I brought you the story of James Antonio, who was sentenced to death for 2 murders. Now, it took a lot of time. It took his attorney a lot of years to convince the judge that he was not the murderer. But the judge did not want to hear it. But the other side said, we don't want to hear any of those new witnesses because they're in jail. We don't want to hear them. So the judge said, we're not hearing no more witnesses. He's on death row. But the board also said the same thing. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it, blah, 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 blah. Both sides argued. He stays on death row. So the question is, will he die or will he live? You're going to meet the family of Antonio. And you're also going to see that last meal he's prepared as he and the warden become great friends. Once again, Cynthia McFadden.
Two o'clock. Antonio James has 10 hours to live as his family arrives for a final visit. Their bus ride to the death house is somber.
We forgot about your boy, Michael Perry.
While he waits for his family, Antonio James has asked for Sergeant Henry to wait with him. The guard and the prisoner arrived on death row at nearly the same time. And now, to pass the hours, they reminisce about the inmates they have known.
Okay, we forgot Sonia's brother. We can mention him, yeah.
For the family, this day is about faith and denial. James's mother made this same trip to the death house last year, so she continues to believe this is not the last time she will see her son. James's son, 19-year-old Antonio Jr., has spent this week making up for lost time. He's seen his father 4 times these last 6 days, twice as much as in the entire 12 years before. Tony Jr. brings his son, yet another Antonio, to see the grandfather he had never met until this week.
I was wondering how you feel about seeing your family today. There were bound to be tears.
Yeah.
Do the tears make it harder for you?
Well, it hurts me because I know what they're going through.
Of his 6 siblings, James is especially close to his sister Lupita.
I can't breathe. I can deal with me. I can deal with whatever I have to go through. It's that when you look at someone else and you recognize the impact that it's going to take on them. You gonna sing Happy Birthday? You gonna sing Happy Birthday?
The goal today is to keep things upbeat, provide distraction, anything to help the condemned man maintain his composure.
Yeah, all right.
James himself reminds one of the young nephews how to play his part.
Point to the old man, I love you, man. I know that. Don't go to acting crazy. That's the worst thing you could do now. No, if you really act crazy, I'm going to put you out. I'm not going to act crazy, man. 5:30.
Throughout the visit, James pays closest attention to his mother and the minutes ticking away, until Antonio Jr. takes the watch right off his father's wrist, a keepsake promised to him, something he could pass on to his own son. The watch is the only possession Antonio James has to give. Next door, dinner preparations get underway. The last meal will be served in the visiting room once the family has been cleared out at 6 o'clock. The hour approaches. There is now only time for a few last memories.
I just don't want to see him get in no kind of trouble out there, that's all. I want to see him take care of himself and be strong out there and hang on.
In the end, it is Antonio James who comforts his family.
Mama. You just gotta hang in there, man. It's gonna be alright.
My dad crying.
I'm tired, big up. Okay. Okay. All right. I gotta sit with you. All right. Take care.
6 o'clock. At the front gate, one of the witnesses has arrived hours ahead of time.
Will this close a chapter on your life?
It'll close the chapter as far as Mr. James is concerned, but it'll never stop the hurt and the sorrow.
A few moments later, James's family leaves by the front gate and also attracts the attention of the press.
And let's go now to Angola. It's Charles Molyneux is there. Charles?
Well, John Margaret, James spent the day with his family. His family has now left. He will spend the rest of this evening having his last meal.
I am in Angola, where it appears the execution of condemned killer Antonio James will go on as scheduled.
Even now, James's attorneys are furiously working the U.S. Supreme Court, trying to get a stay. But they admit that's a long shot, and they fully expect their client to be executed sometime after midnight tonight.
Well, he has fewer than 6 hours to live. 41-year-old convicted killer Antonio James' life is now in the hands of the United States Supreme Court.
He has ordered a seafood platter for his last meal. He will spend the rest of the evening with his spiritual advisor and attorneys. They have until 3 o'clock by law to do it, 3 o'clock in the morning. But they usually get started at 12:01, George.
Okay, thanks very much. James Rose reporting live from Angola prison, where the man will be put to death in about 6 hours.
And he can sit here.
What will you do when it's over?
Take a deep breath, and we'll go back through it another dozen times and want to do it right. You know, just wonder what God thinks.
Will you pray that day, that night?
I try to pray every day, yeah. We're going to pray when we have supper that night. Well, let's bow our heads and we'll say grace. Dear Lord, we just thank you for this meal. We just thank you for this food. We just pray.
All these are almost instantaneous. Before the strangers are empty, they've taken effect. The first syringe is sodium pentothal. That's going to put him to sleep.
Comfort the victims, and you'll comfort Tony as he takes his walks and out if it so be.
Second one is pancurium bromide. It's going to stop him from breathing.
We just pray that you'll bless each and every one of us and be with us through this day.
And the KCL is a cardiac drug, and that'll stop his heart.
Bless his food. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay. You first.
If Antonio asked you to hold his hand, would you?
The victims are going to say, I wish someone had held my daughter's hand while somebody was killing her. And I'm going to say, if I had been there with your daughter and I was in a position where I could have done that, I would have held your daughter's hand if I could have. And I wouldn't even have let it happen if I could have. But since I couldn't be there, it doesn't mean I shouldn't do what I should do while I'm here with him. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
The answer then has to be, yes, I'd hold his hand.
Well, Mr. Henry, you came over Saturday and never took you out to dinner.
What about that, Henry? Man got a sense of humor.
James works to keep the mood light. It is perhaps the only thing left he can control.
Yeah, no. I don't want them to think that it's going to be any kind of problem or something like that, you know. So I just was trying to make the situation for him as comfortable as for myself.
I'm trying to make the warden comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see y'all later then.
All right, Lord.
Okay. Now y'all do not cry.
No, indeed.
Yeah. And make this man have to console y'all like he did the last time.
I know, you're not going to do that. We promise.
That's what me and him said I was going to tell y'all. I did good, Tony, didn't I, with that? Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right.
This is not something I look forward to do. And I don't know that it's right or wrong. I know that right now this is the law of the land. This is what we do, and this is what we're going to do.
Have you asked Antonio James to forgive you for what your role in this is?
See, that's the part I don't vacillate on. I don't need any forgiveness for my role in what I'm doing. If I needed forgiveness, then I'd be committing sins and I'd be doing wrong. I'm not doing wrong.
Until the end, Antonio James continues to maintain he never shot either victim.
We've talked a lot about what you're innocent of, and I want to ask you, what are you guilty of?
Robbery.
Armed robbery. When you talk to God about your sins,
I ask for forgiveness.
that doesn't include their deaths.
It includes their death for being present. I don't want to try to find them.
There are going to be people watching this who say Antonio James is just a great con artist. That he's just conning all of us.
That's okay. That's fine. Because it doesn't matter if he is or not. It matters how we ourselves deal with this. And how it moves me and how it moves others. And that's what really counts. I don't think he is, but if he is, still okay.
Back at his ranch office, Warden Kane joins his staff for their dinner.
You think he's going to get a stay? Think it's sayonara, huh? Paul, you pass the ketchup. You help yourself first.
Last year by this time, the warden had already gotten the call that stopped the execution. Tonight, no word.
We're just kind of on standby and watching the clock, and he's doing fine. He's with his two religious advisors.
This is from the Supreme Court.
This application to stay of execution.
When did you receive this one?
About 5 minutes ago or so.
So that means
That means it's denied. So that means execution will probably take place on its own.
The James family will not be permitted inside the prison for the execution, so they gather for a prayer vigil at the front gate.
You still want to think a little bit about the victim too, but we can't deal with the victim now. We've got to figure out how we're going to deal with this. So let's proceed. We watch the clock. What you have, 10:38. And the lawyer says we have a horrible job, horrible way to make a living. Think we do?
For some, the warden's job is a sad but necessary one.
I wish we didn't have to be here tonight.
I wish nobody had been murdered. For 16 years, since this couple's daughter was brutally murdered, they have held their own vigil, supporting every execution. For Antonio Jr., this is too much.
That's my father. How you think I feel? How you think I feel? He's about to be killed for something he hasn't done.
Will we stop having victims?
Stop having victims?
That's right. Stop having somebody else decided to take somebody else's life.
How do you think? How do you know he took his life? You don't even know the person. What's his name?
Antonio G. James.
What happens now?
Well, till about 11:45, we keep waiting, and we'll prepare him to go ahead and go to the death chamber. If no, we get no calls. If nothing happened, you know, it's still kind of a fluid thing. It could go either way.
So what happens now? Again, remember, it only takes one phone call from the attorney or the Supreme Court. But remember, the Supreme Court's application was denied. So that means that the execution can go forward. When we return, will Antonio James live or will he die? Sidney McFadden's conclusion to The Judgment at Midnight when we come back. So stay with us. And now the conclusion to our story. Antonio James's life is in the hands now. Remember, the Supreme Court's application was denied, so that means the execution can go forward. The victims and the family are all outside watching the execution. So the question is, will he live or will he die? It only takes one phone call from the governor or an attorney to find out. Here with the conclusion to The Judgment at Midnight, Cynthia McFadden.
It is just a few minutes before midnight. Now, only a phone call from the governor can save Antonio James's life.
Roll a boot cuff up in your pants. Put your sweatshirt on.
I told the warden tonight that I hated to hear this talk from him, that I'm just doing a job. We've heard that before from people, and we know that sometimes you just have to stand up and you say, this job of killing people is not what I should be involved in. And I told the warden, I said, I hate to hear you say that, but I would never counsel you against being here because you are important to my clients, and he is. There have been other wardens that have not treated my clients with the kind of dignity and respect that he does.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread.
At midnight, Warden Kane leads Antonio James to the death chamber.
For thine is the kingdom,
dead at 12:27 a.m. this morning. Thank you.
I can't feel him. I can't touch him.
It wasn't no fun watching a man die. And it's no fun burying someone that you love, that someone like Mr. James have killed. Mr. James decided to take lives, so Mr. James had to surrender his life.
Tell us what happened tonight.
Well, he was laying there, and then he kind of grabbed my hand, so I held his hand, and then I told him he'd wait for us, get ready, going for the ride. And I said, the angels are here. He kind of smiled. He said, bless you. That's the last word he said. And then I had nodded my head to go ahead. He was holding my hand real tight. And then after a couple of minutes, he took about 3 or 4 deep breaths, and then he relaxed my hand. I do believe right now his soul is in heaven, and he's okay. And since I believe that, then that makes it easier.
And tomorrow?
It's like the dog barks and the caravan keeps moving across the endless desert. So is life.
And Antonio James's cell on death row will be filled by someone else?
Quickly.
And very quickly it will. So now what happened before the execution? Cynthia McFadden is going to walk us through the details. As Gimme Rick will return with more of the Judgment at Midnight. Don't go away. As we start to wrap up the Judgment at Midnight, the question is, did it go so well? We're here again, Cynthia McFadden with more details.
There are currently more than 3,000 men and women on death row, and our Cynthia McFadden is here now to share some thoughts with us. One of the strangest parts, still the eeriest, has to be the detail of the rehearsal to get it right, and did they?
Well, Diane, the warden told me that it didn't go smoothly. Of course, our cameras weren't permitted in the execution chamber. No state has ever permitted that. The warden said that they had to actually unstrap Antonio James's arms from the execution table because they weren't able to get a vein in which they could pump the lethal poisons. In fact, the medical personnel were apologizing for taking so long and for not being able to get a vein right away. So it didn't go as smoothly as they had hoped.
And what about Antonio James himself? What does his story tell us about the others on death row?
He's quite typical. Most are young. Most have very few resources. Most are poor and have few resources to help defend themselves. And most are not very educated. Antonio James taught himself to read while he was on death row.
Did you talk to the victims' families afterwards? Were they consoled?
I talked to the son of one of the victims, Alvin Adams Jr., and he was relieved it was over, but he said that really didn't provide any closure for him. He said that, he would always miss his father, and he said that he hopes someday executions are shown on television, because he says maybe it would stop some kid from following the same path.
Question of justice, always with us. And thank you, Cynthia McFadden.
I just wish it showed more executions. Because really, it could help prevent people from going to death row. I hate to bring this up again. Common sense alert! What's the common sense here? The common sense would be permit the cameras in, show the execution, educate the prisoners, so that way no prisoner can ever be on death row. We have scared straight programs for kids. I would show you a clip of the Boondocks, but I'm afraid they're gonna block my ass. But let me describe it to you, as I'm going to read you a transcript from that Scared Straight program. And I'll do that when we return, so stay with me. If you join us, we're giving you common sense about death row and death penalty by having cameras allowed in the execution or death chamber. That's just common sense, me playing the common sense alert. Inspired by Dr. Phil. So, if we had a Scared Straight program documentary, it would really help. Because really, you think jail is cool? Jail is fun, a party? Yeah, party! It ain't cool. It ain't fun. If I was locked up for 10 years, I mean, I killed somebody. Antonio James, he was locked up for life for killing somebody. But what does the prison do? You say, ain't nothing to know about that, but here's what Huey had to say in The Date with the Booty Warrior. I looked at the script, and I'm going to read it to you. I would show it here, but I do not have the Type-C to HDMI input thing for the TV, so I could show it to you. But if I had it on, if I turned on my Xbox and showed it to you via what happened, then maybe we would know. So here's what he had to say. The prison industrial complex is a system situated at the intersection of the government and private interests. It uses prisons as a solution to social, political, and economic problems. It includes human rights violations, the death penalty, slave labor, policing courts, the media, political prisoners, and the elimination of dissent. But there was one thing they left out, and I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say the R word. I'm not going to say it. I definitely am not going to say it. So what's my take on this? Well, here in the state of Texas, there is the death penalty. Another case here. Do you remember the onion field killers? Jimmy Lee Smith and Powell? Smith, he was sentenced to life in prison, and Powell sentenced to die. The car memorialized in the book and in the movie. Then something happened when the movie aired years ago. Both have been granted parole dates, but the victims here were like saying, "This is just betrayal. They don't deserve probation." The parole was granted and the parole was denied. That's what I've learned from 2020. That's just how I remember. If you want to see that full clip, we'll provide it in an annotation above or in the description below. We'll be right back. Just almost a week ago, we focused in on facing danger. Accidents happening on the Harbor Bridge. We heard from victims, the prisoner, and more victims, even state lawmakers. Now there's an update. Take a look.
We're also hearing from more of our state lawmakers responding to our Facing Danger investigation. Saturday, Pat Simon spoke with State Representative Todd Hunter on 1440 Keys Radio during the Veterans Radio Roundtable show. He asked Hunter if he thought the legislature should hold public hearings this session on this matter. Listen to this.
Todd, do you think that there should be a hearing on this?
To me, I would support anything that opens up the public to have input.
And here at Chris 6 News, we will continue pressing for real solutions to the dangerous wrong-way driver issue on the Harbor Bridge, so stay tuned.
And stay tuned to give me a break for more of this Facing Danger, because common sense alert. It's all about common sense. And these Facing Dangers are all about one thing. Common sense. Common sense tells you you don't drink and drive. You don't drive on the wrong way. You don't hit the victims. Drive safe, drive normal. That's the key. That is definitely the key. Now, finally tonight, in GP, parental involvement. Now, this probably comes when parents are forbidden from visiting their students on campus. Now, almost 3 years ago, during the pandemic, parents were not allowed to visit their kids during school hours because of the virus. So take a look at this.
Well, Welcome back, everyone. Over in the Gregory Portland ISD, some parents were sounding off tonight during a regularly scheduled school board meeting. Now, last week we introduced you to the group GP Parents United. They want the district to find a safe and secure way to allow parents on campus. Under current GP ISD policy, they can only stay on campus if they're volunteering and go through a screening process. The parents group wants to bring back activities, though, like muffins with moms, donuts with dads, and having lunch dates with their kids.
You have inspired and empowered us parents and families at GP to stand. Now we seek to inspire and empower you to make a change for the greater good.
This is not just about lunch. It's about teacher rapport, trust, school-home connection, accountability, family bonds, core memories, and much more.
Opening our schools for lunch visits is not ideal. It is not ideal from the standpoint of safety. It is not ideal from the standpoint of our ability to focus on academics first, rather than devote additional staff hours to this effort. And it's not ideal from the standpoint of the fact that many of our families work during the day and cannot leave to have lunch with their child, resulting in students feeling left out, a feeling that they carry through the rest of the day and cause them to struggle in school.
The district says they will revisit their learning and safety policy every year.
Now, facing danger, a Chris 6 News investigation.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for
Do I have to say it? Common sense alert! If parents want to visit their kids during school hours, they're more than welcome to. Are we going back to the days during the pandemic where parents are not allowed to get their kids food or visit with them during lunch? Exactly. What does common sense tell you? Common sense should tell you if parents want to visit, then let them visit. Let them visit. It ain't common sense to just start telling you, we don't want parents coming over here. This is going to be causing a distraction. This and that, blah, blah, blah. I ain't to tell you, but kids shouldn't be left out. I mean, parents are checking with their kids, checking on the school, this and this, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, bam, you come up with a policy saying, no parents shall visit at lunch. Period. Ain't no exceptions. Before we leave here, there's more development stories on this. So let's take a look at more of this facing danger stuff.
Joining us, I'm Michelle Lorenzo. Pat Simon has the night off. As we reported in our Facing Danger specials, wrong-way drivers are a real problem across the Harbor Bridge and have caused at least 6 fatalities in the last decade. In the process of reporting, we found out that Portland police are having to use some tactics that other agencies may disagree with. Our investigative reporter Brian Hoffman sat down with both the Corpus Christi and Portland police chiefs to talk about the differences in their policies.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! 122, it just hit my unit.
Stopping wrong way and intoxicated drivers coming from Corpus Christi has become a normal part of the job for Portland police, with officers having to stop these wrong-way drivers nearly once a month.
I've been the chief here for 8 years, and this has been going on since the day I got here and well before.
During our Facing Danger coverage, we found out that Portland PD has made it a policy to stop these wrong-way drivers by any means. And while that usually means spike strips or trying to pull over the vehicle,
if that doesn't work, then we're going to ram that vehicle and stop that vehicle in whatever manner we can.
Across the bridge in Corpus Christi, Police Chief Mike Markle doesn't quite agree with all those tactics.
Right, there's a high potential that he's going to kill one of his officers or he's going to cause a danger to another citizen in another vehicle. So those things have to be weighed out.
I understand that that was one of the concerns that was raised, that we're putting our officers in danger. Well, that's why we wear the badge, is we'll put our own selves in danger to protect those other people.
But Chief Corey also says that his officers get proper training for these techniques, are able to call off a chase should one start and get too dangerous, and
no citizen, no officer, no suspect has been seriously injured or injured that I know of in the methods that we use to stop these vehicles.
You see, Corpus Christi police have a restricted pursuit policy, which means that they'll only chase suspects in certain circumstances.
Pursuit policies are common sense policies, right? Risk versus reward. There's no absolute no pursuit, but it's very restrictive. And if you do pursue, if our officers do choose to pursue, or if a supervisor chooses to allow them to pursue, they need to be able to articulate why, and why it was worth that risk to catch that individual.
This strategy is one that's been used more and more by law enforcement across the nation, limiting the liability of police departments by also limiting the risk of innocent bystanders getting injured in a pursuit.
And a lot of smaller agencies, and I get it, a lot of agencies, period, will say that, a thief is a thief, we're going to do everything we can to catch him, we're going to do whatever we can. Well, that's a little antiquated thinking, in my opinion.
It is, however, not a policy that's held by the Portland Police Department or the Texas Department of Public Safety troopers.
You cannot let crime occur and let people flee from the police and think they're going to get away with it with no consequences.
In the end, the main difference is that CCPD officers need a supervisor to allow them to pursue a suspect, while Portland PD officers immediately take chase. And it's up to their own best judgment or the judgment of their supervisor to call off any chase if it gets too dangerous.
Mark is a good chief, and he's going to do what he thinks is right. And I the same.
We're going to continue to do what we do because I, as the chief of police here, think that saves lives. And that's just the way it is.
For 6 Investigates, Brian Hoffman.
And we'll keep looking more, and like I said before, we'll keep looking into this.
You've
and on
invested
future episodes of the show, we'll let you know what happens. But before we leave, comment more if you think I should just play the common sense alert. If I should just play the sound effect while I say common sense alert, because I really think it would help. So if I go common sense alert and I play an alarm, you don't want to hear the alarm, just say, I would not like to hear that alarm. Or I do want to hear that alarm. Because really, we've lost common sense. These issues right here, when it comes to all of these, we've all lost common sense. Common sense would have seemed to me that education is common sense. That's how it is. Okay. Coming up on Wednesday, I don't know what I'm gonna have for you on Wednesday.
Is going on outside this week? Ups and downs, or kind of?
Let me pull up here. Okay, coming up on Wednesday. I don't know. We'll figure out something coming up on Wednesday. So that's Give Me a Break for this Monday. We'll see you again on Give Me a Break Wednesday if we come up with something. For all of us here at YouTube and Give Me a Break, this has been a 50-minute video almost. So if we reach that, it'll probably be the best. So for all of us here at YouTube and Give Me a Break, good night, everyone.